Hi, and welcome to my video on how the Revolutionary War ended. We're going to have a little quick flip chart, but basically I'm going to explain how the war ended and what happened at the Treaty of Paris. Okay, let's begin. At the Battle of Saratoga in New York State on October 17th, 1777, uh, Benedict Arnold, the commanding officer of the United States Army in the North, defeated General Burgoyne of the British Army soundly. You see that sourpuss guy right here handing his sword over to Benedict Arnold. Well, that's Burgoyne, and this would end his career. But more importantly for the colonials, it gave Benjamin Franklin, who was the American ambassador to France at the time, evidence to prove to the French that we were serious about this war and that we could beat the British. And so after the Battle of Saratoga, the King of France, Louis XVI, wanting revenge for losing all of his North American colonies at the end of the French and Indian War, will bankroll the American Revolution. Now this is important. The Americans had no credit whatsoever, and they were literally printing worthless paper money. So, in order to buy guns, medicine, uniforms, and to simply pay their troops, the Americans needed money from a powerful country. They needed an ally, and that ally would be France. Throughout the war, the British Navy, the British Army is going to camp out on the Atlantic coast, whether that be Massachusetts up in the north, or New York City, or Baltimore, or Wilmington, or Charleston, South Carolina. They're always going to have their back to the sea. The sea is how they get resupplied. The sea is how they get food, equipment, new troops, everything. Well, with the North completely in the control of the Union Army, and by the North I mean Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, and the New England area. New York, the state itself, was actually still in control by the British. But with the rest of the North completely under rebel control, the British are going to try a southern strategy. That's not going to work as well. And so the British Army is going to want to resupply themselves, and they're going to go to a small place in Virginia called Yorktown. This is going to be a fatal mistake. Now, this sourpuss of a man right here is Admiral de Grasse. He is in charge of the French Navy. And the French Navy back then, their main concern was protecting the sugar ships that were coming from the Caribbean and going to France. France made a lot of money on the sugar trade. General Washington, who was stuck in upstate New York, wrote de Grasse a letter saying, hey, we know the British are going to be in Virginia at a place called Yorktown. Would you please come and help us? De Grasse cut a deal with the Spanish Navy. The Spanish would agree to protect French shipping against pirates and the British, so the French Navy could then go up and help in the Chesapeake area, that's Maryland for you and I, to go help and fight the British. Well, in 1781, the French Navy, the French Army, and the American Army are going to surround the British Army and General Cornwallis at a town called Yorktown. They're going to defeat the British Navy, which is amazing because the French never really beat the French Navy at anything. I mean, the French never beat the British Navy at anything, but they will here. And with his back to the sea and no support, surrounded by French artillery pieces and American artillery pieces, General Cornwallis will surrender. Now, although this happens in 1781, the Treaty of Paris, which officially ends the war, will not be signed until 1783. Negotiations between the two countries will go on for 2 years. But during that time, the British are still in control of most of the state of New York. They control the forts and several ports. What's that you say? Why am I showing you a painting where the half of it isn't completed? Well, This was the portrait for the Treaty of Paris, and the British were so embarrassed that they had lost to simple country folk colonials that, well, the British ambassador refused to sit for the portrait. So, sorry guys, this is all we have. After the Treaty of Paris was signed, the Americans were elated because they got far more than anybody thought that they would ever get. First of all, the British cede all territory from the colonies to the Mississippi River. That's this area right here. And they cede any territory claimed around the Great Lakes region except Canada. So this territory here, Vermont, which was not part of the 13 colonies, western New York, and the entire Ohio Valley, as well as the western side of the Appalachian to the Mississippi River, is all going to officially be part of the United States. This territory here, on the western side, well, that's going to go back to France. So the question you have to be asking yourself is, why did the British give up like that? I mean, other than Saratoga and Yorktown and maybe one or two other battles, like the Battle of Trenton, the British Army pretty much whoops the crap out of the Americans for a good 6 or 7 years. Well, it's very easy to see. The British are very practical people, and all they really cared about when it came to the colonies was being able to trade, and the government being able to tax that trade once it came to England. Well, if they're fighting a war and they're spending money on troops and ships and garrisoning, well, that means the government's not making any money on the deal. And people in England begin to realize, why are we spending all this money when the Americans are happy to trade with us, whether we win this war or not? So, in 1781, after the last British troops are beaten at the Battle of Yorktown, the Parliament in England decides, this is enough. We'd rather have them be an independent country. It'll be embarrassing for a little bit, but it won't affect the money that we're making anymore. And so consequently, Britain leaves. They decide they're going to keep the garrison town of Quebec. They're going to keep the garrison town of Montreal, because really the rest of Canada is just grizzly bears and pine forests, right? So other than that, the rest of North America, they really don't care about. Let the Americans have it. The Americans are so overjoyed by the leniency of the treaty that there's immediately after the war a kind of reconciliation. Now, there are people who don't like the British, but they're willing to do business with them, right? And that was the whole reason why there was a French and Indian War. That was the whole reason about the Revolutionary War anyways, is that business was affected by all this taxation. But now that the British don't have to defend the colonies, they don't have to tax them, and the Americans are on their own. Please make sure to watch my second video on the forming of the Constitution. That's going to be really important. Bye.